We've got interesting news from Paradox, who have, cancelled a whole bunch of shit as their, old CEO has returned and tried to refocus the company a bit. So this is all quite interesting because Paradox have, at least from my perspective, they have had a bit of a tumultuous relationship with some of their core franchises as of late. I mean, with EU4, we basically had the studio head come out and say, yeah, it's been shit for a while, and it's my fault, sorry. Which I thought was very interesting to have happen indeed, and certainly refreshing in terms of dev communications, actually, stating the obvious and being open about it. So let's get into what's actually going on with Paradox. Okay, so Paradox have formally ended production on a number of unannounced projects, and they are basically refocusing on proven game niches that better meet the company's requirements on return and risk. Now, this whole thing is going to be very interesting when we think about the maybe some corporate politics going on here, but basically Fredrik Wester, who's the returning CEO, said they were born and raised on strategy and management games, so they've sharpened their pipeline basically to focus more on strategy and management games. Pretty mind-blowing business strategy, but it does seem like a sensible one. However, all of this is going to amount to $15.4 million in losses for their pre-tax Q3 profits. So all of this is going to be hurting their bottom line. That certainly is unfortunate for them. Now, what's interesting here is, so we've got, Fredrik coming back in. Now, Ebba, she was the previous CEO. She stepped down last month following different views in the company's strategy going forward. Now, she was replaced by Wester, but of course she herself replaced Wester in 2018. So she basically had this 2-year-long tenure that was, I suppose, a bit unsatisfying. Q1 2021 posted a 44% drop in profit over the same period last year. That's not what you want to hear. There's what we said about regarding Europa Universalis as well, which, ouch, you don't want that, especially when, those aren't mass market games, but they are very high investment games, very specific fans who love them. So, man, you piss off those fans and you are really going to damage yourself. Now, all that said, it's not like Fredrik Wester's 2 stints were uneventful either. He was replaced by Ebba in 2018, and she was apparently trying to take Paradox in a new direction that ended up not going down that well. She left earlier this year because of different views on the company's strategy, and in and around that time, of course, that's when all that stuff we covered about their company culture came out, where there was a union-led survey that basically revealed mistreatment, bullying, harassment, and gender discrimination, that the culture was worse for women, and that the survey concluded things were systemic and far too common. None of that is good to hear, and it highlighted a culture of silence, which high-level perpetrators, high-level perps were shielded by the company, which is certainly not good. Now, what was interesting is that, Ebba left, and she didn't really seem to leave in a way that was directly correlated with that. Who knows what was said behind the scenes, let's be real. Wester did come back, though, and he immediately issued an extensive Twitter apology for inappropriate behavior towards an employee during a meeting in 2018. Now, that apparently had nothing to do with him stepping down. That was like a planned thing. But there you go. It was interesting. Now, a lot of people were like, okay, fair enough, Fredrik, but we kind of would have wanted to know more details about what you actually did, what actually happened. And that is stuff that we quite simply do not know. So, there's that going on. Now, the thing then is, what were these differing views? Because obviously when you think about Paradox, you think of Europa Universalis. You think of Crusader Kings. You think of City Skylines. So what, were they just suddenly making FPSs and stuff? Well, I suppose there is the whole weird outing of them publishing the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines game that has been seemingly a shit show with, devs leaving, many delays, and I don't just mean small devs, but the people who were considered to be important creative forces in that franchise.
Yeah, I believe that basically cycled creative leaders.
Yes.
Which is really not what you want to see.
So that's going to be bad. Right, so we don't know what these differing views on company strategy were. What we can say is that during her tenure, they did roll out the DLC subscription service for Europa Universalis, which, interesting thing, also interesting considering the quality of those DLC releases that came out. There was certainly a lot of discontent from the fans. They tested this with a limited group of people last year. They introduced it fully in March. And basically, to cut a long story short here, these games are kind of like, you could say it's like the Civ model, but really, really pumped up, where, you know, a Civ game comes out and it's probably great, but it truly becomes an excellent game after 3 expansions or 2 expansions, right? That's the thing with the Civ franchise. Now, the difference is that for EU4, well, it had 14 major expansions, 3 immersion packs, and 9 content packs. All of that together is about $300. So being able to pay $4.99 a month, certainly you could argue that's a value. Now you could also argue, well, you don't own the damn thing, and yeah, that is true. But it would take many months to come close to the total $300 there. I suppose it's just down to people buying those expansion packs. Surely they're going to be waiting in sales and things like that, which could perhaps make the, it's a subscription and you don't own it, have a little bit more of a sting. But I think there's no doubt for some people, if they just want to hop into one of these for a few months and they want to get, because it's always this thing whenever you're starting a new Civ campaign. Like if you're starting a new Civ campaign in the newest Civ game, but it's been out for a few years, you're going to be sitting there being like, okay, well, I don't want to buy the DLC because I've heard this game's good. I want to try it. But everybody who's told me it's good, it's because of the base game being expanded upon. So now the only way for me to try the game when it's really, really good is just to buy the game and all of the expansions. Or wait for a sale and buy all of them slightly cheaper. You could say for somebody who just wants to jump in and get the most big complete experience that the $4.99 a month thing's actually a pretty good, pretty decent value proposition. So you could maybe think that perhaps that was a sticking point. Perhaps it's maybe too good of a value and it was essentially undercutting some of their whales. Not to be too discriminatory. I mean, if you play EU4 and Crusader Kings all the time, then, you can probably very much justify spending $300 on them. Come on, MMORPG players, the subscriptions, right? So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. Perhaps EBA was pushing for more new IP, things like that. Different genres, we essentially do not know. That said, Fredrik Wester has always been a vocal supporter of the extended DLC model. He basically, here's a long tweet chain, but for the long and short of it, it basically just is, we release our games, we make more money. We make money by releasing our games. Then we release DLC. We make money by releasing the DLCs. That lets us make more DLCs, and that's how you can see a game like EU4 last for a long time and be enjoyed for, I was going to say thousands of hours. For some people, probably north of 10,000. I wouldn't be surprised. Many hours anyway, let's just say. That's how you kind of end up with those humongous games. So he was a fan of that, and you could maybe take this tweet thread to sort of mean, oh, maybe he disagreed with EBA wanting to bring in the subscription, and oh, maybe her real plan was to bring in a sort of a $9.99, Paradox Unlimited subscription or something like that. You could say that. However, somebody did reply to him saying, hey, how about $10-15 a month to have access to everything plus the DLC? And Fredrik said, not a bad idea at all. So, in principle, he's totally not against Paradox going into gas, games as a service. That's basically that with Paradox.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the subscription seems like a perfectly fine idea. I can't imagine that being a stopping point for, leaving a CEO over the head of a subscription for DLC. I think it might have been more the branching out and overseeing the, even literally just, profits are all gone. Okay, well, shit. You're going to have to, literally from a shareholder perspective, you need to leave because, even all the other things aside, you joined and the profit ran away. So at the basic level, it's your direction that's causing the problem, especially if it did actually result in changes like branching out. The story tells itself. Wester comes in, goes, cancel all of those. Why? Yeah. And the simple answer, the Occam's razor approach is, those must have been not working or not a part of what their plan is, which is the proven plan that I think fans are. Obviously, the mishaps aside, which seem to be relatively common, but also kind of come back with, their games they're still best in the business for that. They're known for that.
But there have been valid reasons for the core fans to be worried there. I remember the launch of Imperator Rome, which certainly that would have been in development during Wester's previous tenure, of course. I think it was Republic of Play, one of the sort of strategy game YouTubers that I watch from time to time. And just a lot of the consensus in that scene, that's one of the scenes I do watch quite a lot on YouTube. I've generally been more of an RTS guy myself, like, AoE StarCraft, but I do like to keep tabs on what Paradox do because their games are just so fucking interesting. And yeah, Imperator Rome certainly had its launch issues, and really just seems to have had, at the time anyway, struggled. So they have had a few things that I think will have rattled the confidence of fans. I think especially the EU stuff with the studio head basically having to apologize for what has been done to EU4, which, I mean, goddamn, right? Goddamn. So when we think about strategy then, yeah, is it moving to more games? What, is it moving to a subscription model? What was the strategic difference? What I would say is that they talked here about proven game niches that better meet their requirements on return and risk. They were born and raised in strategy and management games. Now, that vampire game, that was not being developed internally. That was externally. Well, that said, I kind of doubt that was greenlit during Ebba's tenure either, to be honest. It could be, though, that under her leadership, they did see more of a future in games like that, where, look, it's 3D. It's got a world you can walk around in. It, for some people, is so accessible and experiential that it's more mass market than sitting down and playing, Crusader Kings or Hearts of Iron or, any of those grand strategy games that Paradox and a small few other companies put out there. So it could be the case that Ebba was trying to push more in the direction of building Paradox out. I mean, certainly if you think about the games that they're very much making, I mean, a Total War competitor in a historical setting. I mean, a game that just recently came out on PS Plus as well, I believe, it's published by Team 17. It's, the World War II game, Hell Let Loose. I mean, a Paradox Interactive fan is probably going to be maybe not into shooters, but very much into historical, and maybe it's not too much of a leap for Paradox to move into that sort of thing. So maybe it is the case that that's where they were moving. It's purely just because they said proven game niches to better meet requirements on return and risk. That says to me that they would be continuing to use their in-house engines, or whatever they're using, but their proven technologies, their proven workflows, really focusing more on content and design and not the things that are extremely expensive to start doing, which I think would be starting in a new genre from the ground up, especially if that would also mean having to, get staff. You're really good in that genre. Hire up, build teams. That's all really expensive. So that's as much as I can really make sense of it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I hope this means that the Europa Universalis fans, combined with the studio director being very candid, that they sort of take a little bit of time off on that franchise, and when they do come back to doing DLCs, that they're great, and that people actually get what they deserve there. At least them being honest is a good signal.
Yeah, I think the only thing is they left 15 projects in development, apparently. So they had a lot of expenditure that they straight up cut. Because I seen it referred to as several a lot. Oh, sorry, no, they have 15 new titles in the works still. That's what it is. So the 15 new titles in the works, and they cancelled several. So it is sort of interesting. I hope they come out and speak about it at some point in time. I hope there's like a little games industry biz interview with Ebba to kind of post-mortem it, or one with Wester, because it'd be really, really cool to understand exactly what's up. But I think this is a really interesting story of like what the actual strategy can mean, and if you track it at this level, if you're a fan of the games, you can see what they'll actually focus on, when and why. Because I think this is genuinely fascinating, and I hope the Paradox fans actually get what they want out of this all. Because I think if you're having problems with developing games, and you kind of go, okay, well, let's cut the extraneous stuff off and focus on what we want. Because I think if you're going to have hundreds of dollars of DLC for games, you're going to have to treat those fans with care. Like,
yeah, and you know, it's not in the grand strategy genre, but I can totally empathize with them because Total War has, for the longest time, it was my franchise. Like Rome Total War, Medieval 2, pretty big. And well, okay, I actually did. Empire was fine. I really liked Napoleon. I'm one of those guys. I like the era a lot. But moving into Rome 2, and Rome 2 being a disaster, and I think it's DEI is the mod you sort of should get to put onto Rome 2 to really make it shine. But, you know, moving from Rome 2 and then so soon into Attila. Now, Attila actually has got loads of things that are pretty great, but for me, it's just core issues like blobbing in the combat system, AI still not being good. And then we move into, you know, the fantasy games, right? Warhammer comes, and I sort of enjoy it for what it is, but it has big AI issues. There's loads of issues regarding single entities and how they operate. Just basically loads of problems that, like, if you are a decently hardcore fan of the franchise who wants to win via very much, you know, your basic bread and butter kind of strategy, having, you know, a bit more of a slow-paced battle that you really sort of, you know, deal with in a way maybe a bit more similar to Rome 2 and Rome and Medieval 2, or maybe Rome 2 with DEI installed. You know, we found that these battles, that they're getting more arcadey. They're focusing more on, you know, single entity unit heroes, which I guess you can have make sense in Three Kingdoms and stuff. But even Three Kingdoms has got a whole bunch of very, very bizarre design and balance things, specifically within its combat. Actually, it's pretty damn great in campaign map. But it's a sort of thing where I can totally empathize with a Paradox fan, because as somebody who loves Total War, I know that the only place I can really get Total War from is Creative Assembly. And the AI is still not where it needs to be. And unit blobbing is still a problem. And there's issues with cohesion and issues with, you know, cheese. And now that the metas in their games are turning into people making Doom stacks. Which, you know, I love watching the Legend of Total War Doom stack video and winning a match by grabbing your character and running them around in circles to waste all of your enemy's ammo because the AI is not good. But to me, that's really not the core experience that I want. I mean, totally understand somebody would exploit that. But that just is to say, Paradox, guys, I know what it's like, at least to a degree. Where, you know, there's only one person or one dev that's going to give you the thing you want, and you kind of see them in a bit of a holding pattern. You see them really advance as a business, but perhaps be in a holding pattern creatively and in some sort of aspects of quality, and it does make you sad.
It certainly does.
And actually, I mean, for Creative Assembly, I mean, even me just saying that, that's probably Blacklist. They're pretty liberal. At least if memory serves, they're pretty liberal with the Blacklist when it comes to influencers or media and stuff like that. And they're also pretty much like, you have to be covering the latest thing, which has meant that a lot of people who really like historical Total War are almost feeling left behind by sort of CA community and stuff, which is like a bit, you know, oh yeah, but the historical fans are kind of the ones who got you where you are. Come on. Anyway, I know that's a bit of a diversion. But, I mean, you can see the DNA between the two and that sort of thing of a limited niche audience who really likes the thing. And, yeah, you know, maybe it is that thing. Ebba was trying to expand it out. And, you know, maybe they were doing some of what Creative Assembly did by expanding the game out and their games out in that sort of way. But, you know, maybe it wouldn't have been as successful as it has been for CA. Hard to know, but that's some of my thoughts on the strategy scene anyway.
Yeah, it's that thing of if you want to make a lot more money, that's the one that kind of makes sense immediately, where you go, okay, well, we'll expand the audience because you need to expand the audience. But, you know, that isn't always going to work, because even Jim Ryan recently said he's kind of annoyed that PlayStation games are targeted to 20 to 30 million people as opposed to hundreds of millions. You know, I think it was Gene Park said he wants it to be Squid Game levels of popular PlayStation games. He wants Pokemon levels of popularity from PlayStation IP. And like, that's one direction to go broad. I think it's a feasible direction, but it's like, it's the one that has the most risk. And if you're Paradox and you've got a really comfy chair, why would you get out of your chair? All you have to do is, you know, treat the chair with some sort of respect and just continue to sit in it and reap in all the profits of having fans that actually like your niche.
Yeah.
Especially when you're entrenched in such a deep niche. because I think, you know, you can kind of, there's other niches you can kind of get in and out of fairly handy, but for something that deep, when you've got staff, especially, like, because if Paradox run into profit issues and then start to cut some of like their, you know, their most dedicated staff or their best staff over the years, who are you going to find that has, you know, possibly decades of experience in that one specific genre? You're not going to find somebody who can just sort of come in and do the same job. So that's the thing where like a deep cultivation is going to be, you know, it might feel boring to them to be stuck in their niche, but if they do it really well, that's, you know, that's almost like a sense of artisanship in games.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, obviously how you create a sustainable business is that artisanship.
Absolutely. So I suppose that's really it in terms of coverage. I'd say, look, if you're a core Paradox fan, like, what do you think? What do you think? I mean, certainly as a Total War fan, I kind of maybe know what it's like. So do let us know. If you would like a bit of a change in gears to the likes of FF14, New World, and other sort of fantasy and MMO-ish things, do check out our new channel, Bellular Gaming. It is linked down below. And when it comes to video games, we will have things to show you soon too. That's it for us. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.